They blamed a single mom and an autistic man until he showed proof that left them speechless. But here's the real question. When that proof plays, will it clear their names or reveal who's been controlling the story all along? Maya moved through the pre-dawn kitchen like someone trying not to wake the walls. The apartment was small enough that the refrigerator hum felt like a second heartbeat, steady and a little too loud. She folded a paper bag lunch with the kind of careful attention people usually save for fragile things, smoothing the top as if neatness could keep trouble away. Outside the window, streetlights still held the parking lot in a pale grip, and her reflection stared back with tired eyes that didn't quite believe in morning anymore. She checked her phone and didn't open the new message yet. Her son sat at the table in mismatched socks, turning the cereal box a fraction at a time, aligning edges until the corners met perfectly. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Maya knew that quiet could mean calm, or it could mean the start of a storm no one else could see coming. A spoon clinked, too sharp in the silence, and his shoulders rose as if the sound had hands. Maya softened her voice, slower than her fear. "It's okay. Just breakfast." He blinked hard and stared past her, listening to something only he could hear. She finally opened the message from school. The words were polite, in the way cold metal is polite. A reminder, a concern, a request for a meeting. She read it twice, then a third time, because her brain kept trying to edit it into something gentler. Her pulse quickened anyway, that old body memory of being judged before she even spoke. She pictured the front office chairs, the clipboard, the tight smiles that turned into a story about her once she walked out. She typed a reply, erased it, typed again, and left it unsent. On the walk to the bus stop, the air smelled like damp asphalt and winter breath. Maya pulled her coat tighter around her son and kept her face neutral, the way people did when they couldn't afford to look unsure. A woman across the street paused with her dog and watched them too long, the gaze lingering as if it could calculate what kind of mother Maya was. Maya felt her cheeks heat, not from the cold. Shame was strange that way. It arrived early before anything actually happened, like her mind was rehearsing pain to stay prepared. At the corner, Ethan appeared the way he always did, precise and quiet, stepping into the same patch of sidewalk as if the day had grooves only he could follow. He wore headphones that covered his ears completely, and his eyes stayed down, not from rudeness but from survival. His hands were tucked into his jacket sleeves, fingers hidden, posture slightly folded inward. People like to imagine they could read someone in a glance. They mistook his stillness for something dark. Maya noticed the way his breathing changed when a truck hissed past, loud and sudden. Ethan stopped near the bench and stood instead of sitting, as though sitting would invite someone to speak to him. He stared at a crack in the pavement with intense focus, and Maya wondered what he saw in it. Numbers, patterns, a small order that made the world less sharp. Her son watched him too, curiosity flickering like a candle that hadn't decided whether it was safe to burn. Maya looked away quickly, because being seen looking felt like a risk. Yet she couldn't stop thinking that Ethan always showed up at the same time, like he was keeping watch over this corner. The bus arrived with a sigh, doors folding open like a mouth. The noise hit Ethan first. His shoulders tightened and his jaw clenched, and for a second, his face looked like someone holding back a wave. Maya felt a pull in her chest, an instinct that had nothing to do with friendship and everything to do with recognizing distress. She guided her son onto the bus and chose a seat near the front, where she could watch him and watch the door and watch the world all at once. Hypervigilance wasn't a choice. It was what happened when security was a luxury. Through the window, Maya saw a woman point at Ethan as he waited to board. Not aggressively, not openly cruel, just a small gesture to her friend, like passing along a rumor without words. Ethan didn't look up. He stepped onto the bus with the careful timing of someone entering cold water, 1 inch at a time, and moved toward a seat alone. His knees bounced once, twice, then stilled, as if he'd forced his body into obedience. Maya's son stared, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a small fidget ring, rolling it between his fingers with sudden urgency. At the next stop, a group of parents climbed on, carrying coffee and conversation like armor. Their laughter filled the aisle, bright and careless, and Maya felt herself shrink without moving. She could almost predict which faces would notice her and which would pretend not to. One woman's eyes skimmed Maya's worn shoes, the frayed strap of her son's backpack, the cheap phone case. A half-smile appeared and vanished. Maya heard nothing said, yet her brain supplied the sentence anyway, because it had heard it before. She should have done better by now. When the bus pulled up near the school, Maya's stomach tightened in advance. Her son's fingers pressed into his sleeves, and his breathing grew shallow, like his body knew the building before his mind caught up. Maya touched his shoulder gently, then pulled her hand back fast, because too much touch could feel like being trapped. She whispered a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. "We'll get through it." Outside, the school looked ordinary. Brick, banners, a flag moving in the wind. But Maya felt it like a stage where she always forgot her lines. Ethan stepped off behind them, still alone, moving in a straight line, as if curves were dangerous. For a moment his gaze lifted, not to Maya's face but to the camera mounted near the entrance. His eyes narrowed, thoughtful, and then he looked away. Maya didn't know why that small glance made her uneasy, but it did. A camera was supposed to mean safety, yet she'd learned that safety often depended on who controlled the story. She watched Ethan walk toward the side path, not the main doors, like he had no interest in being noticed at all. At the drop-off area, voices overlapped in fast bursts, and Maya could feel her son's nervous system catching fire. His pupils widened. His hands fluttered once, then locked together. Someone brushed past them too quickly, perfume and impatience, and he flinched like he'd been slapped. Maya tried to create a pocket of calm with her body, standing slightly in front of him, blocking the flow. She saw a staff member glance over, lips pressed, and Maya's mind raced ahead to consequences that hadn't happened yet. That was the cruel trick of fear. It made tomorrow feel inevitable. A teacher approached, smiling the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We need to talk soon," she said softly, as if softness made it kinder. Maya nodded, forcing her face to cooperate, and she felt the old humiliation rise, being spoken to like she was a problem to manage. Behind the teacher, another parent held a phone at chest level, screen angled outward, thumb hovering. Maya couldn't tell if it was recording or just texting, but her skin prickled anyway. She looked for Ethan without knowing why and caught a glimpse of him at the edge of the walkway, pausing again, watching the same corner like he was waiting for a moment he'd seen before. Her son tugged Maya's sleeve, urgent but silent, and pointed at something near the entrance, something small that most people would ignore. Maya followed his finger and saw a sign taped crookedly to the door, half covered by another announcement, like someone had tried to hide it in plain sight. She couldn't read it from here, but the bold heading made her throat tighten for reasons she couldn't name. The teacher kept talking, the crowd kept moving, and Maya felt two stories forming at once, the one happening out loud and the one being built quietly behind her back. She swallowed and stepped forward, not realizing that one careless second could change everything. Before she went inside, she glanced again at that half-hidden sign, and this time she saw a single word clearly, her last name, printed as if it belonged to a warning, not a person. If you were Maya, would you walk through those doors anyway, or turn around and protect your child from whatever the school had decided? Put it here below in the comments. Maya stepped through the doors as if crossing a line she couldn't uncross. Warm air hit her face, smelling of floor cleaner and cafeteria syrup, and the noise of the hallway wrapped around her son immediately. He stiffened, gaze snapping to the fluorescent lights, then to the ceiling tiles, counting silently the way he did when his thoughts needed handrails. Maya leaned close and murmured, "Eyes on me. Not as an order, but as a bridge. He tried. His lashes fluttered. The bell rang and the sound landed like a thrown object. The sign with her last name wasn't a warning poster, not officially. It was a reminder about pickup rules, the kind schools printed in bold so nobody could claim confusion later. Only someone had underlined her name in dark ink, hard enough to press through the paper. Maya stared at it for a breath too long, and her brain filled the gap with faces, parents in a group chat, staff in an office, someone deciding she needed to be labeled. Her mouth went dry. Underlining wasn't policy. Underlining was personal. She looked around, but every adult nearby wore the same mask of busy innocence. Her son started to rock on his heels, barely noticeable unless you knew him. Maya did. She touched his backpack strap and loosened it so it wouldn't pull on his shoulders, a tiny relief she could offer without drawing attention. A hallway monitor walked by and gave a tight nod that felt like a verdict. Maya forced her lips into a polite smile, because survival had taught her that people punished women for looking tired. The monitor's eyes moved past her, then flicked back, like she was checking a box. At the end of the hall, a small crowd formed around a bulletin board. There were colorful flyers layered over each other, fundraisers, announcements, smiling photos of student achievements. Yet Maya noticed what didn't belong, a plain sheet of paper, taped low, positioned where a child might see it before an adult did. Her son's gaze locked onto it the way metal finds a magnet. His fingers tightened around his fidget ring. Maya followed his stare and felt her stomach drop again because the paper had the same typeface as the email message on her phone. Official, clean, impossible to argue with. A staff member stepped in front of it quickly, blocking the view with her body, then laughed too loudly at something another teacher said. The laugh was bright, but wrong, like a lid slammed down on a pot. Maya caught the staff member's eyes for half a second. The woman's expression flickered, fear, then control, before smoothing into a pleasant smile. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice sweet as frosting. The sweetness made Maya's skin crawl, because sweetness often meant someone had already decided you were difficult. Maya tried to speak, but her son made a small sound in his throat, the kind that meant he was nearing the edge. A boy ran past, shouting, and the echo bounced off lockers like an attack. Maya's son flinched and clapped his hands over his ears. A couple of kids stared. One girl whispered, not quietly enough, and giggled into her sleeve. Maya felt anger rise hot and fast, then collapse into the colder feeling beneath it. Helplessness. If she snapped, she would become the story they wanted. If she stayed silent, she would still become the story they wanted. "Let's go," Maya whispered, guiding her son toward the office, choosing the most direct path like she could outrun judgment with efficiency. Her son resisted for a second, feet planted, eyes wide. He wanted to know what was on the paper. Maya wanted to know too. But she also knew that curiosity could become evidence against you in a place like this. She coaxed him forward with the promise of calm, of a quiet corner, of escape. His breathing came in short pulls, like his body was trying to drink air through a straw. In the office, the fluorescent lights buzzed with a thin, relentless whine. A secretary looked up slowly, letting the silence stretch as if it were part of the procedure. Maya gave her name, and the secretary's gaze dropped to the computer screen. Something changed in her posture. Not dramatic, just a subtle tightening, as if the room itself had been warned. She offered a chair without warmth. "They'll be with you," she said, and the words carried that same metal politeness Maya had read in the message. Maya sat, feeling every pair of eyes in the waiting area measure her. She tried to keep her shoulders relaxed so she wouldn't look defensive. She tried to keep her face neutral so she wouldn't look guilty. Her son slid to the floor by her feet, pressing his back against her shin like he needed an anchor. Maya's heart twisted with love and fear, so tangled she couldn't separate them. She remembered being a kid herself, watching adults decide which families were good, and swearing she would never let her child be looked at like a problem. Now she was sitting under that same gaze. Across the room, a man in a suit stood near the water dispenser, tapping his phone with quick, irritated motions. He glanced at Maya, then at her son on the floor, and his mouth tightened. Maya recognized the look. Not concern, not curiosity, calculation. Like a person deciding whether you were worth the trouble. The man turned slightly away and murmured into his phone. "Yes, she's here," as if reporting a delivery. Maya's pulse jumped. She didn't know who he was, but she felt deep in her bones that he wasn't here by accident. The office door opened, and a counselor called Maya's name with practiced gentleness. Maya stood, helping her son up slowly, whispering, "One step at a time." The counselor's smile was careful, almost sorrowful, and that expression frightened Maya more than anger would have. Sorrow meant a decision had already been made, and the smile was just the wrapping paper. As they followed the counselor down a short corridor, Maya noticed a tablet on the counselor's clipboard. The screen wasn't dark. It was paused on a video thumbnail, blurry but unmistakably a scene near the school entrance. Maya's throat tightened. She hadn't seen any video yet. She didn't even know one existed. The counselor didn't mention it, didn't acknowledge it, just kept walking, heels clicking softly like a countdown. Maya wanted to ask, but the question lodged behind her teeth. If she asked, she admitted she was scared. If she stayed silent, she gave them room to shape the narrative first. Her son squeezed her hand, and she realized his palm was damp with sweat, his grip too tight for comfort, like he was trying to hold on to reality. At the door to the meeting room, the counselor paused and said, "This is just a conversation," in the tone people used when they knew it wasn't. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of unseen eyes, unseen posts, unseen decisions. As the door opened, she caught one more glimpse down the hallway. Through the glass entrance, outside by the same corner, Ethan stood perfectly still, staring toward the building as if he could sense the exact second things were about to tip. And then Maya heard someone inside the room say, quietly but clearly, "Start the clip from the beginning." No, not that beginning. The part that makes them look bad. The meeting room smelled faintly of dry markers and stale coffee, the kind of smell that clung to places where people made decisions about other people. Maya sat in a hard chair that seemed designed to keep her from relaxing. Her son hovered close, half behind her knee, eyes darting from face to face as if searching for an exit that wasn't there. Across the table were the counselor, the assistant principal, and a woman Maya had seen once at a PTA night. Perfect posture, expensive scarf, a smile that never softened her eyes. On the far end, the man in the suit set his phone down like it owned the table. They started with gentle words, the kind that sounded caring until the meaning sank in. "We just want to support your child. We want to ensure a safe environment. We've noticed patterns." Maya heard the phrases like footsteps in snow, each one flattening a path toward a conclusion she hadn't agreed to. Her son began rubbing his thumb against his index finger in a frantic loop, a private attempt to regulate a body that didn't understand why everyone's attention felt like heat. Maya tried to speak slowly, carefully, choosing her tone the way someone chose shoes on ice. One wrong move, and she would slip. The woman with the scarf leaned forward with a sympathetic tilt of her head. "There was an incident this morning," she said, as if incident were a neutral word. The assistant principal tapped the tablet, and a video filled the screen. The sound came first, sharp, messy noise. Then the image, the drop-off area. Maya's son's face twisted in overload, Maya reaching out, then pulling back, her mouth moving in what looked like anger. The clip cut before any context could breathe. Maya watched herself on the screen and felt her stomach drop with a nauseating disconnect, like looking at a stranger wearing her skin. "Do you see why this is concerning?" the counselor asked, voice gentle. Maya's mind raced, hunting for the missing seconds. She remembered the underlined sign, the blocked bulletin board, the laughter that sounded like a lid. She remembered the perfume and impatience, the kid running past, the whisper and giggle. None of that was in the clip. The video offered a simple story: a mother losing control, a child misbehaving. People loved simple stories because they didn't demand empathy. Maya's mouth opened, but the words came out too thin. "That isn't what happened." The man in the suit finally spoke, his voice smooth and impatient. "The community is upset," he said. He didn't say parents, he said community, like he represented something bigger than opinions. "There are concerns about supervision," the woman with the scarf added, "and about who you associate with around the school." Maya blinked. "Who?" The assistant principal didn't answer immediately, which told Maya everything. Silence was a weapon. It made her fill the space with fear. The counselor glanced down at her notes and said softly, "There was a man nearby. Several families recognized him." Maya's thoughts snapped to Ethan, standing outside by the corner, still as a held breath. She barely knew him. She didn't even know his last name. Yet she felt the shape of the accusation forming anyway, because she'd seen this before. When people wanted a villain, they chose the one who looked least able to defend himself. "He wasn't with us," Maya said carefully. "He was just there." The woman with the scarf smiled like Maya had confirmed the worst. "Exactly," she murmured, and Maya felt the trap closing, neat and quiet. Her son made a small keening sound, and the counselor's eyes flicked to him, as if he were evidence. Maya reached back and rested her hand on his shoulder. Steady pressure, grounding. She could feel his muscles vibrating under her palm, like a phone buzzing nonstop. The assistant principal slid a paper across the table. "This is a behavior plan," she said, "and this is an agreement regarding pickup procedures." The man in the suit added, "Signing today would show cooperation." Maya's eyes skimmed the page and caught a phrase that turned her blood cold. "Failure to comply may result in further action." Maya forced herself to keep breathing. Fear tried to flood her body, to narrow her vision into panic, because panic would make her sign anything just to make the moment end. She knew that reflex. She had lived it. She slowed her breath on purpose, as if she could press down on her own nervous system with sheer will. She asked, "What does further action mean?" The counselor's gaze dropped for a fraction of a second. Shame or discomfort, or both. "It could involve a referral," she said. "A review." The words were vague, which made them heavier. Vagueness let imagination do the damage. Maya looked at her son and saw him watching the adults' mouths, not their eyes, reading tone like danger. He didn't understand the paperwork, but he understood threat. His fingers clawed at the hem of Maya's sweater, and she realized he was bracing for separation. That realization hit her like a physical blow. Her mind flashed to a memory she hated, her own childhood friend crying in a foster office while adults said, "It's for the best." Maya's throat tightened. She wasn't just fighting for a good reputation. She was fighting for the right to keep being his safe place. Outside, through the narrow window in the door, the hallway moved with distant life, students passing, laughter echoing, normal days continuing as if this room didn't exist. Maya felt trapped in a separate reality, one where a short video could outweigh years of love. She asked to see the full footage, the minutes before, the angle that explained the trigger. The assistant principal's smile thinned. "This is what we have," she said. The man in the suit added, almost casually, "It's already circulating. People have opinions." Maya's cheeks burned again. The old humiliation made new. She imagined the comments before she even saw them. Strangers diagnosing her, condemning her, turning her son into a meme for entertainment. The counselor offered a tissue as if Maya were already crying, as if tears would be convenient proof that she was unstable. Maya didn't take it. She stared at the paper, then at the tablet, then at the adults who had decided what they were watching. The woman with the scarf tapped the table lightly and said, "You can't blame everyone else for what your child does." Something in Maya hardened. Not anger, clarity. She realized they weren't looking for truth. They were looking for compliance, and compliance was cheaper than compassion. She slid the paper back without signing. "I need time," she said, voice trembling, but steady enough to stand on. The man in the suit's expression changed, a flash of irritation slipping through. "Time isn't really a luxury here," he replied, and the way he said it sounded less like advice and more like a threat. The counselor stood, ending the meeting with a softness that felt rehearsed. As Maya gathered her son's backpack, she noticed the tablet again. The video thumbnail showed a timestamp in the corner, just a blur, but Maya caught the pattern of numbers and the partial date. It wasn't from this morning alone. There were multiple clips stacked like a folder. Her mind latched onto that detail and wouldn't let go. Multiple clips meant someone had been recording more than once. As she walked out, she heard the assistant principal murmur to the man in the suit, "If she doesn't sign, we move to the next step." In the hallway, Maya's son suddenly pulled her toward the glass entrance, urgent, eyes wide. Through the doors, Ethan stood near the corner again, shoulders rigid, gaze fixed on the building like he was tracking something invisible. Maya couldn't hear him, but she saw his lips move as if he were repeating a sentence to keep himself steady. Then he lifted his phone, not filming the crowd, filming the mounted camera above the entrance, as if he were documenting the one thing nobody ever questioned. Maya's breath caught, because for the first time she wondered if the real story wasn't about her son's meltdown at all, but about who wanted it to happen. Maya pushed through the doors into the cold, and the first thing she felt was relief. Real air, real space, a world without conference room smiles. The relief lasted only a second. Then she saw the small cluster of parents near the curb, their phones angled like mirrors, faces tilted with the hungry calm of people about to witness drama. Her body understood before her mind did. Someone had primed them. She kept her gaze forward, holding her son's hand with a firmness that said, "Stay with me," even as her own pulse tried to outrun her. Ethan stood a little apart from the group, near the same corner, still and tense. He didn't look at the parents. He looked at the entrance camera again, then down at his phone, then up, repeating the sequence as if testing a hypothesis. Maya noticed something new in his posture, urgency contained, like a person trying not to panic while holding something important. When he finally looked toward Maya, his eyes didn't ask for attention, they asked permission. He raised his hand slightly, a small gesture that could have meant hello or warning. Maya hesitated, caught between fear of being seen with him and the deeper fear of being alone. Her son tugged toward Ethan, drawn by a familiarity Maya couldn't explain. Children like him often sensed safety in people who didn't demand performance. Ethan didn't force smiles. He didn't insist on eye contact. He simply existed, predictable, quiet, honest in his discomfort. Maya's son stepped closer and stopped a few feet away, rocking gently, breathing through his mouth. Ethan lowered his gaze to the ground near the child's shoes, giving space without withdrawing. Maya felt her throat tighten with a strange, aching gratitude. In a morning full of judgment, this was the first moment that didn't ask her to defend herself. A woman from the curb called out, not shouting, just loud enough to be heard. "Is that him?" she asked someone else, and the word him landed with a weight that made Maya's skin prickle. Another parent answered, "Yeah, the one they said to watch." Ethan's shoulders rose like he'd been hit. His jaw clenched. He didn't turn around, but the muscles in his neck tightened, betraying how much he heard. Maya's stomach churned. She realized that people weren't just misreading Ethan. They were being coached to misread him. Fear spread faster when it had a script. Maya tried to move away, to get her son to the bus stop and out of this spotlight. Her son resisted, not with a tantrum, but with a stubborn stillness, eyes fixed on Ethan's phone. Ethan noticed and slowly tilted the screen, not toward the child, but toward Maya, careful and deliberate like he was offering a fragile object. "They cut it," he said, voice quiet, flattened by nerves. The sentence didn't fully land at first. Maya blinked. What? Ethan swallowed. The video, they cut the beginning. Maya felt her body go cold. Her mind flashed to the assistant principal's tablet, the folder of clips, the way they'd refused to show more. She watched Ethan's fingers hover near the screen, trembling, as if he feared the wrong touch could erase everything. How do you know? She whispered. Ethan's eyes flicked to the entrance camera again. Because the timing doesn't match, he said. His voice was direct, not dramatic, like a person stating a fact that cost him something. And because this wasn't the first time. Maya's breath caught. Not the first time meant her son wasn't the only target. Or worse, it meant someone had been practicing. A passing car splashed through a shallow puddle, spraying grit onto the curb. The sudden sound made Ethan flinch hard, shoulders jerking. A parent laughed under their breath, the cruel little laugh that said, "See?" Maya's anger rose fast, then shifted into something sharper, clarity. Ethan wasn't performing fear to manipulate anyone. His nervous system was simply loud. People mistook loud nerves for guilt because it was easier than admitting they didn't understand. Maya stepped closer to Ethan despite the watching eyes, because she could feel the moral choice forming inside her like a forked road. Protect her image, or protect the truth. Ethan finally turned the phone enough for Maya to see. It wasn't a full video yet, just a paused frame, a timestamp, and a corner of the entrance where the camera's view overlapped with the drop-off area. Maya stared, trying to make sense of the angle. "I don't record people," Ethan said quickly, as if anticipating the accusation. "I record patterns, times, changes. It helps me." His words came in a rush, then stopped, like he'd run out of safe air. Maya looked up at him and saw the fear underneath. Not fear of being wrong, but fear of being labeled. Maya's son reached into his backpack and pulled out the small fidget ring again, holding it out toward Ethan without a word. The gesture was simple, almost casual, but it cracked something open in Maya's chest. It was trust, offered with no conditions. Ethan stared at the ring as if unsure he deserved it, then shook his head gently. "Keep it," he murmured, voice softer. He didn't take it, but his eyes warmed, and for a moment his breathing steadied. Maya watched this exchange and realized her son was doing what adults refuse to do. He was responding to the person in front of him, not the story about him. A school staff member stepped outside and glanced in their direction. Their gaze lingered on Ethan too long, then snapped away. The staff member spoke quietly into a walkie-talkie, and Maya felt her stomach tighten. Ethan noticed it as well. His hand gripped his phone harder. "They're watching," he said, almost inaudible. Maya asked, "Who?" Ethan's lips parted, then closed. He seemed to wrestle with the idea of naming something that sounded unbelievable. Then he said carefully, "Not just parents, not just the school. Someone else is steering it." Maya's mind tried to reject the thought because it was too big for an ordinary morning, yet her body recognized it with a grim familiarity. Systems didn't need to shout to crush you. They just needed to nudge people into agreement. She thought of the man in the suit, the word community, the pressure to sign. She thought of the underlined name. Underlining was personal. But organizing fear felt strategic. Maya looked at Ethan's phone again and saw a list, dates and times in neat rows, like someone building a case in silence. It wasn't obsession. It was defense. Ethan lifted his gaze to Maya, and his voice dropped even lower. "There's more," he said, "but if they see me show it, they'll take it." Maya's heart thudded. "Take it how?" she asked, but even as she spoke, she saw the answer. A staff member walking closer, smile ready, hands empty, but intention full. Ethan's shoulders tightened again, the old instinct to disappear battling the new instinct to speak. He glanced toward the side path, away from the crowd. "If you want to know what really started it," he said, "don't look at the video. Look at who told them when to press record. Maya followed Ethan down the side path without announcing it to anyone, as if quiet movement could keep them from becoming a headline. The walkway ran beside a row of winter bare shrubs and a chain-link fence that rattled slightly in the wind. Her son stayed close, eyes on Ethan's heels, trusting the rhythm of his steps more than the chaos behind them. Ethan didn't speak at first. He walked with a stiff precision, shoulders tight, scanning ahead like he was measuring the safest distance from other people. Maya hated how familiar that posture felt. It was the posture of someone who had learned that being noticed could hurt. They stopped near a small public library across the street, the kind with a bulletin board full of flyers and a book drop that clanged when it shut. The place felt neutral, not owned by the school, not owned by the parents' group, not owned by anyone with authority over Maya's life. Ethan stood under the overhang by the entrance, out of the wind, and took off his headphones slowly, as if removing armor. Without them, the world seemed louder for him. He blinked hard and swallowed, then pulled a worn notebook from his jacket pocket. The notebook looked ordinary, creased corners, a rubber band around it, pen marks smudged by repeated handling. Yet Ethan held it with a reverence that made Maya's chest tighten. People laughed at notebooks like that. They called them weird. They didn't understand that for some minds a notebook was a life raft. He opened to a page filled with neat lines, dates written in full words, times, short notes that looked like fragments to Maya. Bell late, camera angle shifted, door sign changed, same woman, same spot. Maya leaned closer, and her stomach dropped. The entries weren't random, they were consistent, they were a map. Ethan tapped one entry with the tip of his pen, the movement sharp and controlled. "This morning," he said. Then he moved his finger down to another day, weeks earlier. And this day, and this one. Maya stared at the pattern and felt her brain do what brains did under threat. Look for meaning fast. Each note mentioned the drop-off area, the entrance camera, and a clip that appeared online later. Maya's skin prickled. "You've been tracking this," she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened, and his eyes flicked away, as if expecting her to judge him. "Tracking keeps me safe," he said. "It keeps things true." Maya felt a wave of guilt crash into her, sudden and heavy. She had assumed Ethan was just a quiet man who liked routine. She hadn't imagined he was quietly surviving a smear campaign that had rehearsed itself on other days, other targets. She looked down at her son, who was now crouched near the library wall, tracing a crack in the concrete with a fingertip as if grounding himself. Maya's heart squeezed. If people decided Ethan was dangerous, they would use him as proof that Maya was reckless. If people decided Maya was unfit, they would use her child's distress as proof. It was a loop of blame, designed to feed itself. Ethan flipped to another page and held it closer to Maya, like he was offering a secret he had protected at great cost. "I don't like recording," he said quickly, words clipped by anxiety. "But I started because they kept saying I was lurking. If I didn't have proof of where I was and why, they could make anything up." His voice cracked on the last phrase, not with tears, but with the strain of being constantly interpreted. Maya recognized the feeling. It was like living in a room where everyone spoke a language you didn't understand, then punished you for misunderstanding them. Maya asked gently, "Why are you near the school every morning?" Ethan's shoulders rose, then slowly fell, like he was choosing truth over comfort. "My sister," he said. "She works early. Her daughter goes there. I promised I'd be here because mornings are hard for her." He paused, eyes fixed on the notebook, not Maya. "I walk her home some days too. If she gets overwhelmed, she holds my sleeve. That helps." The simplicity of the reason hit Maya like a bruise. He wasn't lurking. He was keeping a promise. Yet the world preferred the darker story because it was easier to fear than to understand. Maya's throat tightened. She imagined Ethan's niece gripping his sleeve, trusting him the way her son trusted predictable kindness. She imagined adults watching that and twisting it into suspicion. Maya wanted to tell Ethan she believed him, but she knew belief wasn't enough. Belief didn't stop systems. Belief didn't erase videos. "They're saying things about you," she admitted, voice low. Ethan nodded once, not surprised. His mouth tightened as if holding back a rehearsed pain. "They say things because it works," he replied. "People want a simple shape to blame." Ethan pulled out his phone and scrolled. Careful, protective. He didn't hand it over yet. He angled it just enough for Maya to see a folder with multiple clips, each labeled with a date and a short note. Maya's heart pounded harder. "You have the missing part," she said. Ethan hesitated, and in that hesitation Maya saw the cost. If he shared it, he would become visible, and visibility had harmed him before. The wind pushed cold air under the overhang. Ethan's hands shook slightly. "I have part," he corrected. "Not all. The school camera is the real story, but I have something that points to who edits it." Maya tried to keep her voice calm so she wouldn't add pressure to his already strained nerves. "What do you need?" she asked. Ethan blinked, surprised by the question, as if no one had ever asked him what he needed before demanding what they wanted. He swallowed. "Time," he said, "and a place where they can't hear." His eyes flicked toward the library doors. Inside is quieter, less echoes. Maya nodded. They stepped into the library, and the change in sound was immediate, muffled, softer, like the world had lowered its volume out of respect. In the children's corner, Maya sat with her son, while Ethan chose a table near a wall, back to the room, scanning exits. He pulled the notebook closer and drew a small diagram of the entrance, where parents stood, where the camera pointed, where staff gathered. He marked one spot with a firm dot. "This is where the phone always is," he said, voice steadying as the patterns took over. "Not random. Same height, same angle." Maya's mind pictured the woman with the scarf, the tight smile, the perfect posture. She felt a chill. "Are you saying someone plans it?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. He stared at the dot he'd drawn like it might move. Then he said quietly, "I'm saying someone benefits." Maya felt her chest tighten with the moral weight of it. If she acted on this, she risked being labeled paranoid. If she stayed silent, she risked losing her son. She looked at her child, now calmer, flipping through a picture book without reading the words, soothed by the colors and the quiet. Maya realized she would rather be called difficult than be quietly erased. Ethan finally unlocked his phone and opened one clip, but he didn't press play. He looked at Maya first, eyes serious, voice low. "If you see this," he said, "you can't unsee it, and they'll try to make you doubt yourself." Maya's stomach twisted. She nodded. Ethan drew in a slow breath, then whispered the last part like a warning meant for both of them. "The person who started recording today wasn't a parent. It was someone wearing a staff badge." Ethan pressed play with the caution of someone handling a live wire. The clip showed the drop-off area from farther back, shaky but clear enough. The line of cars, the bright jackets, the entrance camera above the doors. Then a staff member stepped into frame, lanyard swinging, posture relaxed in a way that said they belonged there. Maya's pulse thudded as the staff member drifted toward a parent, murmured something and pointed, subtle, almost friendly. A moment later, a phone lifted at the exact angle Ethan had drawn. The recording began. The clip didn't show Maya yet, but it showed intent, and intent changed everything. Maya felt her mind scramble to protect itself, because the brain hated chaos and loved denial. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe the staff member was just helping. Yet Ethan paused the video and rewound to the same second, letting Maya see the gesture again, the fingertips' direction, the timing too perfect to dismiss. "Same motion," he said, voice tight. 3 mornings, different phones." He slid the notebook closer, showing matching entries. Maya's chest tightened with a grim recognition. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern designed to look like accidents. Her palms went damp as she imagined how easily a pattern became policy. The library felt too quiet for what she was hearing. Even the turning pages around them seemed loud now. Maya looked at her son, who sat cross-legged on the carpet, calmer, lining up small plastic animals from a toy bin into a straight row. His shoulders had dropped. His breath had slowed. In here, he was just a kid with a mind that needed order. Out there, he became a problem people could weaponize. Maya's throat burned. She wondered how many adults in that school had ever seen his gentleness, or if they only saw moments that confirmed their impatience. The cruelty of selective attention felt suddenly personal. Ethan lowered his voice further. "They will say it's for safety," he murmured. "But it's about control." Maya blinked, staring at him. He seemed to choose his words as if each one had to pass a test. "If they call you unstable," he continued, "they can make you sign things. They can move your child. They can make you grateful for less." His face tightened, and Maya sensed he wasn't speaking only about her. She saw it then. He'd been pushed into shrinking for years, trained by consequences to accept whatever small space he was given, and now he was refusing. Maya's phone buzzed. The sound hit her like a jolt, and for a second she didn't want to look, as if the screen could deliver bad news simply by being opened. She checked anyway. A new email from the school district. Subject line crisp and terrifying. Follow-up regarding student support. She didn't open it. Her brain filled the gap with images of forms, referrals, meetings scheduled without her consent. Ethan watched her face change and nodded once, as if confirming what he already expected. "They move fast," he said. "Faster when you hesitate." A woman at the next table glanced over, then quickly looked away. Maya didn't know if it was suspicion or curiosity, but her nervous system didn't care. It treated both as danger. She shifted her chair slightly, shielding Ethan's phone from view. The small act felt like crossing an invisible line, choosing a side. Maya hated that she had to think this way, like truth was contraband. She had grown up believing that if you were honest and polite, the world would eventually be fair. Being a single mother had taught her a harsher lesson. Fairness often required witnesses, paperwork, and stubbornness. Ethan scrolled to another clip and stopped on a frame where the staff member's badge swung forward. The name wasn't fully readable, but part of it was. Enough to make Maya's stomach twist. She remembered the hallway monitor's tight nod, the blocked bulletin board, the laughter like a lid. She didn't yet know if it was the same person, but the feeling in her chest said it connected. "Why would staff do this?" she whispered. Ethan's eyes flicked down. "Sometimes people don't do it for hate," he said. "They do it because it's rewarded." Maya thought of the man in the suit, the word community spoken like ownership. She imagined budgets, reputation, enrollment numbers, pressures that lived above a child's tears. The danger wasn't a weapon or a chase. The danger was a quiet system that could push her family out with signatures and carefully edited clips. She felt her moral dilemma sharpen. Expose the pattern and risk backlash, or comply, and teach her son that truth didn't matter. Maya's jaw clenched. She realized she'd rather be afraid in public than broken in private. Yet she also knew courage without strategy could be used against her. Ethan slid the notebook toward her again, then pulled it back at the last second, conflicted. "If I give you this," he said, voice trembling, "they can say I'm obsessive. They can say I'm stalking." Maya's heart pinched. She heard the fear underneath. Not fear of being wrong, but fear of being interpreted by people who had already decided. "Then we don't hand it over," Maya said softly. "We copy it. We keep originals safe." Ethan stared at her, surprised, as if he hadn't expected her to understand how evidence could become a trap. Maya opened her phone camera and began taking photos of the notebook pages, one by one, steady hands, despite her racing pulse. Ethan watched the screen like a guardian, correcting angles with small gestures, careful not to touch her, careful not to overwhelm himself. Her son looked up briefly, then went back to arranging animals, the quiet rhythm holding him together. Maya felt a strange steadiness grow in her chest, the kind that came when fear stopped being fog and became a plan. Outside the library windows, the school sat in plain view, brick and flags and normalcy. It looked innocent. That was the worst part. When Maya finished, Ethan leaned in and whispered something that tightened the air between them. "There's a meeting tonight," he said. "Not official. Parents, staff, the people who share the clips first." Maya's stomach dropped. "How do you know?" she asked. Ethan swallowed, eyes fixed on his phone. "Because I got invited," he said, voice flat with disbelief and dread. Then, as if the sentence hurt to say, he added, "They think I'm on their side." By afternoon, the sky over town had turned the color of dull steel, and Maya's apartment felt smaller than it had in the morning. She kept checking the window like trouble might park outside. Her son sat on the living room rug with his headphones on, building a careful city from blocks, lining them up until the streets were perfectly straight. The order soothed him, but it unsettled Maya, because she could see how hard he worked just to feel okay. Every few minutes she glanced at her phone, fighting the urge to refresh the school portal again. Each vibration made her shoulders jump. She finally opened the district email. The words were wrapped in warmth, but the meaning was sharp. A review had been scheduled, and Maya was encouraged to cooperate fully. There were attachments, forms that asked questions she didn't know how to answer without sounding guilty. The language wasn't openly cruel. It was worse. It was clinical politeness that implied she was already under suspicion. Maya read the sentence about alternative placement twice, hoping she'd misunderstood. Her mouth went dry. Alternative placement sounded like a doorway that didn't swing back. A knock came at the door, quick and uncertain. Maya froze. For a second she imagined someone from the school, someone from the community, someone with a clipboard and a smile. She walked to the peephole and saw Ethan in the hallway, standing too straight, hands clenched at his sides. He looked like he was forcing himself not to pace. When she opened the door, he didn't step in immediately. He waited for permission, eyes flicking past her shoulder as if checking the room's noise and light. Maya nodded and moved aside. Ethan entered carefully, as though the wrong movement could trigger an alarm. Her son looked up and paused, then went back to his blocks without fear. That small trust hit Maya harder than anything the district had written. Ethan's gaze softened for a moment, then tightened again. "I shouldn't be here long," he said, voice low. "People. Watch." Maya's stomach turned. "Are they watching you?" Ethan didn't answer directly. He pulled out his phone and showed her a screenshot of a group chat invitation. The name of the group looked harmless, almost cheerful, like a neighborhood club. Beneath it was a message. "We're meeting tonight to discuss the situation." Maya stared at the screen, feeling anger rise like heat under her skin. Discuss the situation, as if her child's nervous system were gossip, as if her motherhood were a public vote. "Why would they invite you?" she asked. Ethan's jaw worked. "Because they think I agree," he said. "They think I'm grateful when they include me." The pain in his voice was quiet, but it was there. Maya saw the trap. Invite the outsider, use his presence as a prop, then blame him when the story needed a monster. Inclusion could be a leash. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch but didn't lean back, posture held tight, eyes scanning the room's corners. "I have another clip," he said. "Not video, audio." Maya's breath caught. "From the morning?" Ethan shook his head. "From last week," he replied. He hesitated, then added, "A staff member talking to the man in the suit." Maya felt her stomach drop. The man in the suit hadn't felt like a parent. He'd felt like pressure wearing human skin. Ethan's fingers hovered over the file, as if he feared even playing it would summon consequences. Before he could press anything, Maya's phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. You should stay away from Ethan. Think about your child. Her skin went cold. She looked up at Ethan, and he stiffened as if he could sense the message without seeing it. Maya didn't show the screen yet. She didn't want to load fear onto him. But the text confirmed what he'd warned. They weren't just judging. They were steering. Maya's mind raced through possibilities, each one uglier than the last. If someone had her number, they had access. If they had access, they had reach. Maya walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. Across the street, a car sat idling longer than it needed to. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a neighbor. Her brain refused to accept maybe anymore. The body under stress didn't like uncertainty. It turned uncertainty into certainty just to feel prepared. Maya hated that her thoughts were becoming a cage. Behind her, Ethan spoke softly, almost to himself. This is what they do, he said. They make you feel watched until you start watching yourself. Her son suddenly knocked 2 blocks over by accident. The small crash made him flinch, and his face tightened with the beginning of panic. Maya rushed over, lowering her voice, slowing her hands, helping him rebuild the line the way he needed it. Ethan watched, eyes heavy with recognition, then looked away like he felt he was intruding on something sacred. Maya realized the meeting tonight wasn't just about reputation. It was about whether her son would keep a stable world or lose it to adult pride. She felt her resolve sharpen. We can't let them write the story, she whispered, mostly to herself. Ethan finally played the audio, volume low. A muffled hallway sound, then a voice Maya recognized from the office, smooth, impatient. The man in the suit. He was speaking to someone else, tone casual, like discussing a routine task. If we can document recurring disruptions, he said, we can justify the change. Another voice answered, female, controlled, familiar in a way that made Maya's stomach twist. The parents will support it if we frame it right, the woman said. Then she added, almost laughing, they already believe what they're told. Maya's hands shook. The words weren't about safety. They were about justification, about framing, about using the crowd's certainty as a tool. Ethan stopped the audio abruptly, breathing shallow, eyes wide with the strain of hearing it again. Maya swallowed hard and forced her voice steady. We need someone neutral, she said. Someone who can't be bought by their narrative. Ethan stared at her, then glanced toward the door as if imagining the risk. They'll say I'm manipulating you, he whispered. Maya looked him in the eye. Then we make it impossible to ignore, she replied. A soft knock came at the door again, lighter this time, almost hesitant. Maya froze, heart slamming. Ethan stood too fast, knocking his knee against the coffee table, face tightening in alarm. Maya's son looked up, startled, hands hovering over his blocks. The knock came again, and a voice called through the door, falsely friendly. Maya, it's just me. I wanted to check in. Maya didn't recognize the voice, but she recognized the tone of someone who smiled while holding a leash. Ethan mouthed, "Don't," and Maya realized the meeting tonight had already started, right here, on her doorstep. Maya kept her hand on the chain lock and opened the door only a few inches. A woman stood in the hallway with a tote bag and a bright, practiced smile, the kind that tried to imply friendship without earning it. She introduced herself as a family liaison, saying the words slowly, as if Maya might not understand them. Her perfume drifted in first, sweet and heavy. "We heard today was tough," the woman said, voice warm in a way that felt staged. "The school just wants to make sure you feel supported." Maya noticed how the woman's eyes kept flicking past her shoulder, searching the apartment for proof. Ethan stayed out of sight behind the wall, but his presence altered the air anyway. Maya felt him holding his breath, trying to be quiet, trying not to become the next clip. The liaison's gaze landed briefly on a pair of men's shoes by the door. Ethan had kicked his off earlier without thinking. Her smile tightened for half a second, then returned. Is someone here with you? She asked lightly. Maya's pulse jumped. The question sounded caring, yet it carried a hook. If Maya said yes, she confirmed a narrative. If she said no, she lied and risked being caught. The woman waited, eyes kind, posture patient, like she had all night. Maya chose a third path. My child is resting, she said, calm and firm. If you need to communicate, email me. The liaison's smile widened, and Maya saw annoyance flash behind it. Of course, the woman said. It's just, there's a lot of concern. People are talking. The words, people are talking, landed like a threat disguised as weather. Maya felt the familiar pressure to perform gratitude, to apologize for inconvenience, to smooth over other people's discomfort. She refused. She held eye contact and let the silence sit, heavy and unmoving. From the living room, Maya's son made a small sound, an anxious hum that slipped out when he sensed tension. The liaison's head tilted slightly, listening. He's such a sweet boy, she said quickly, tone sugary. But big feelings can be scary for other kids. Maya's stomach clenched. Big feelings. Scary. The woman was building a story in real time, arranging words like blocks into a shape that served her. Maya felt anger flare, then she forced it into stillness. Other kids have big feelings too, Maya replied. They're just allowed to show them. The liaison laughed softly, as if Maya had made a cute joke. We all want what's best, she said, and took a small step forward, testing the boundary. Maya didn't move back. The chain lock held. Tonight, some parents are meeting, the liaison continued, voice casual. Just to talk. If you came, it might help. People love hearing a mother's perspective. Maya heard the trap. Walk into the room alone, be outnumbered, be recorded, be framed. She imagined her words clipped, her face paused on an unflattering expression, her fear turned into guilt. She could almost feel the comment sections forming before she spoke. Behind the wall, Ethan shifted his weight. A tiny sound. Fabric, brushing fabric. The liaison's eyes darted toward it immediately. I thought I heard, she began. Maya cut in gently. Please don't come by unannounced again. The liaison's smile faltered, then returned sharper. I'm only trying to help, she said. But the warmth was gone now. It was replaced by a polite chill, the kind that reminded Maya of office doors closing. Refusing support can look concerning, the woman added, as if sharing helpful information. Maya felt her skin go cold. Concern was their favorite word. Concern built files. Maya's son walked into the hallway behind her, drawn by the voices. He stood barefoot on the carpet, clutching his fidget ring, eyes wide and glossy with sensory strain. The liaison's face softened in a show of empathy, but her gaze dropped quickly to the child's hands. His rocking, the way his jaw tightened. Maya saw the assessment happen in the woman's eyes. Not a child, but a case. Hi, sweetheart, the liaison cooed. Maya's son didn't answer. The liaison's smile twitched. Non-response always made certain adults uncomfortable, because it reminded them they weren't in control. Maya stepped sideways, placing her body between the liaison and her son like a shield. He doesn't do well with strangers, she said, voice even. The liaison nodded as if she understood, then asked, Has he been diagnosed? The question was too casual, too eager. Maya felt her throat tighten. Labels could unlock services, but they could also be twisted into weapons when people wanted to reduce a child to paperwork. That's private, Maya said. The liaison's eyes hardened for a fraction of a second. Of course, she replied, still smiling. I just want to make sure the school has what it needs. From behind the wall, Ethan finally stepped into view, not dramatic, not aggressive, just present. The liaison's eyes snapped to him instantly, and her smile froze like glass. Ethan stood with his hands visible, shoulders tense, face pale. Maya felt his fear like static in the air. The liaison recovered quickly. "Oh," she said, tone bright. "So you do have company." Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it, as if his words got stuck behind the weight of being watched. The liaison's gaze slid to her phone in her hand, thumb hovering as if the device were an extension of her power. Maya saw the moment clearly. If the liaison recorded Ethan in her apartment hallway, the story would be written before truth had a chance. Maya reached out and, with calm precision, closed the door until only the chain held. The liaison stepped back, surprised. "You can't," she started, and Maya interrupted softly, "Email me." Then Maya shut the door completely and clicked the deadbolt. Her knees trembled after, delayed shock catching up. Ethan exhaled shakily, eyes wide. "She wanted to see me," he whispered. Maya nodded, feeling her pulse hammer. "She wanted to confirm a rumor," Maya replied. They moved away from the door, and Maya's son pressed into Ethan's side without warning, like seeking the nearest calm body. Ethan stiffened, then carefully lowered his arm an inch, not touching fully, but allowing closeness. Maya watched her child choose comfort without fear, and it broke her heart in a hopeful way. This was what the world refused to see. Not a menace, not a problem, but a quiet kindness that asked for nothing. Maya's eyes stung. She realized the liaison's visit wasn't about support at all. It was reconnaissance. Ethan's phone buzzed with a new message. He flinched, then looked down. His face changed, tightened, then hollowed. He turned the screen toward Maya. The group chat had a new pinned note with an address and a time, and beneath it a line that made Maya's stomach drop. "Bring any evidence. We need to shut down the lies tonight." Maya stared at the words, because they sounded like justice, yet felt like an ambush. Ethan swallowed hard and whispered, "They're going to do it again. They're going to play the clip, and they're going to make sure the room believes it." The address led to a community center that smelled like old carpet and fresh coffee, the kind of place that hosted bake sales and small victories. Tonight it held something heavier. Maya arrived with her son bundled in a coat that swallowed his small frame, and Ethan walking half a step behind, as if trying to make himself smaller without disappearing. The parking lot lights made hard shadows on the pavement. Through the glass doors, Maya could already see clusters of parents, faces bright with purpose, voices warm with certainty. Certainty was comforting when you were right. It was dangerous when you were wrong. Inside, someone had arranged folding chairs in neat rows facing a long table. A banner on the wall read, "Together for our kids," cheerful letters masking sharper intentions. Maya felt her body brace, shoulders tightening, breath shortening, as if her nervous system remembered every time she'd been outnumbered. Her son's eyes darted to the fluorescent lights, then to the ceiling fan, then to a corner where the sound seemed quieter. Maya guided him there with gentle pressure on his back, letting him stand near a wall where he could feel anchored. Ethan hovered close, scanning faces, jaw clenched, as if preparing for impact. The woman with the scarf was there, of course, seated near the front like a person used to being listened to. The man in the suit stood beside her, phone in hand, smiling with the easy confidence of someone who never feared consequences. When he saw Maya, his smile widened a fraction. Too quick, too satisfied. Maya felt that smile crawl under her skin. It wasn't welcome. It was ownership. A few parents turned to look, whispers moving through the room like a ripple. Maya caught fragments. "That's her. That's the kid. Is that the guy?" As if they were naming characters, not people. Ethan flinched when someone's laugh spiked too loud. He pressed his fingers together, then released them, then pressed again, a small loop of self-control. Maya watched him and realized how much bravery this cost him. He wasn't brave because he felt fearless. He was brave because he felt everything. Maya's son leaned into the wall, rocking slightly, eyes fixed on a poster of smiling children. Maya wanted to leave, to protect him from this atmosphere of polite hostility. But leaving would let them tell the story without her in the room. She stayed, and hated that she had to. A woman took the microphone and spoke in a tone that sounded like compassion with teeth. "We're here because we care," she said. "We've seen concerning behavior." A screen lowered from the ceiling, and the same clip from the school played again, louder this time, framed like proof. Maya felt her face heat as her own image flickered in front of strangers. Her son covered his ears. The room murmured, the sound of a crowd deciding together. Someone muttered, "Unfit," as if it were a simple adjective. Maya's stomach tightened so hard it felt like pain. She tasted metal in the back of her throat. The speaker paused the video on Maya's face at the worst possible second, mouth open, eyes wide. "This is what our kids are exposed to," she said. Maya's hands shook. She could feel her brain scrambling for language, the way stress narrowed her words into fragments. She stood anyway, forcing her voice steady. "That clip is missing the beginning," she said. A few people scoffed immediately, like the idea of missing context was an insult. The woman with the scarf smiled with pity, as if Maya were making excuses. "Of course," she said, voice smooth. "There's always a reason." Then the man in the suit stepped forward, taking the microphone with practiced ease. "We're not here to shame anyone," he said, and Maya felt the lie land like a slap. "We're here to ensure standards, procedures, accountability." Each word sounded reasonable, and that was the problem. Reasonable words could hide unreasonable motives. Maya noticed how he never said her son's name. He never said child. He said disruption, risk, liability. Those words didn't have faces. They didn't have feelings. They were easier to move around like chess pieces. Ethan's breathing grew shallow. Maya could see him nearing overload. The lights, the voices, the eyes. Yet he stayed. He reached into his jacket and touched the notebook like a grounding stone. When the man in the suit glanced at Ethan, his expression flickered, surprise, then calculation, like he'd expected Ethan to be useful, not oppositional. The man's smile sharpened. "And we have to address another concern," he said, turning slightly so the room's attention shifted. "There's been a man near the school. Families have reported feeling unsafe." Heads turned toward Ethan in a wave. Maya felt the room's focus snap into place like a trap closing. Ethan froze, shoulders rigid, face pale. Someone whispered, "That's him," with a thrill that made Maya sick. The woman with the scarf leaned forward, voice honeyed. "Sir," she said, "why are you always there?" Her question sounded polite, but it carried accusation in its bones. Ethan opened his mouth, and for a moment, no sound came out. Not because he had no answer, but because a room full of judgment could steal language. Maya watched his throat work, the effort visible, and her heart clenched. She realized this was how they did it. They provoked distress, then used distress as proof. Maya stepped closer to Ethan without touching him, close enough to be felt. "He has a reason," she said, voice firm, "and he has evidence." The word evidence changed the room's energy. Some people leaned in, others stiffened. The man in the suit's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned. "Evidence?" he repeated, amused. "Of what?" Maya felt every eye on her now, and her nervous system screamed to retreat. She didn't. She lifted her phone slightly. "Of what happened before the clip," she said, "and of who told people when to start recording." A hush rippled through the room, thin and uneasy. The woman with the microphone tightened her grip. "We don't allow recording here," she said quickly, voice sharper. Maya's pulse jumped. No recording meant no accountability. Ethan's fingers trembled as he held his phone, not raising it yet, just holding it like a fragile truth. The man in the suit stepped closer, lowering his voice as if offering kindness. "Let's not escalate," he murmured. "You don't want to make things worse for your child." The threat was soft, almost tender. That tenderness made it crueler. Maya felt a surge of anger, then something steadier underneath. Resolve. She looked at her son, still covering his ears, eyes squeezed shut, and she felt the moral line inside her sharpen into certainty. A child shouldn't have to pay for adults' comfort. Ethan swallowed hard and leaned toward Maya, voice barely audible. "If I play it," he whispered, "they'll try to take my phone." Maya nodded once, heart pounding. "Then we don't ask permission," she whispered back. Ethan's thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. The room waited, hungry and skeptical, as if truth were entertainment. Before Ethan could press play, the lights flickered, just once, brief, enough to make several people gasp and laugh nervously. Ethan flinched hard, and the man in the suit smiled again, relieved like fate had interrupted at the perfect moment. A parent near the front stood up and said loudly, "This is exactly what we mean. Chaos follows them." Maya's stomach dropped because she saw it. They would use anything, an innocent flicker of electricity, to reinforce their story. Ethan's thumb still hovered. His face tightened, and he whispered, almost like a prayer he didn't trust, "Okay." Then the screen lit brighter, and the first second of the hidden clip appeared. The audio from Ethan's phone was thin at first, swallowed by the room's restless breathing. Then the clip steadied, and the sound sharpened. The morning air, the squeak of shoes on pavement, the school doors opening and closing like a slow pulse. On screen, the drop-off area appeared from an angle no one had seen. It wasn't flattering to anyone. It was simply true. Maya's face wasn't even in frame yet, which made the crowd shift with impatience, as if truth should hurry up and get to the part they enjoyed judging. A staff member walked into view, lanyard swinging, posture casual. The same staff badge Ethan had warned about. The person didn't look villainous. That was what made it terrifying. Evil, when it happened in real life, often wore the face of routine. The staff member stopped beside the woman with the scarf and leaned in close enough to be private. Their voices weren't perfectly clear, but the intent was. The staff member pointed toward the entrance, then toward the curb, then made a small circling motion with their finger, like directing traffic, like directing a scene. On the recording, the woman with the scarf nodded, smiled, and lifted her phone with a practiced ease. The camera began. The staff member stepped backward, watching, satisfied. A murmur ran through the community center, not outrage yet, but confusion, the uncomfortable sensation of a story rearranging itself in people's heads. Maya felt her heartbeat thud in her ears. She wanted to scream, "See?" But she forced herself still. She had learned that when people were confronted with being wrong, they often punished the messenger just to regain control. Then Maya and her son entered the frame. Maya's son was already tense, shoulders high, eyes too wide, fingers twitching around his fidget ring. The clip showed the seconds before the meltdown, the part that never went viral. A parent stepping into their path, blocking them, speaking too close. The parent's hand reached out, not striking, not dramatic, just enough to invade space. Maya's son recoiled sharply. His body tried to escape and couldn't. Maya's face tightened, not with anger, but with panic, the panic of recognizing the edge approaching. She reached for her son's shoulder, then pulled back, remembering what touch could do when he felt trapped. The parent leaned in again. The clip caught words this time, clearer than Maya expected. "Stop acting like that," the parent snapped, voice low but cutting. "My kid's watching." A few people in the room sucked in a breath. Maya felt tears threaten, not because she wanted pity, but because the truth hurt. Her son's distress hadn't come from nowhere. It had been provoked, sharpened, pushed into spectacle. The crowd had been sold a story about a bad mother and a bad kid, but the raw footage showed a child being cornered and shamed for existing. Maya's son's hands flew up to his ears. He cried out, Maya's lips moved in the clip, but now the sound matched her expression. Please give him space. Her voice wasn't rage. It was pleading, strained and thin. The viral clip had made her look explosive. This showed her trying to contain a disaster with bare hands. Maya felt something inside her loosen, a knot of self-doubt she hadn't realized she was carrying. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't imagining it. The room had been lied to, and the lie had been edited into something people could enjoy. A man near the front stood up abruptly, face flushed. "That's not what was shared," he blurted. His voice cracked on embarrassment. The woman with the scarf went rigid, her smile disappearing as if it had been switched off. The man in the suit's expression tightened, then smoothed into a calm mask that didn't fit the moment. He lifted a hand slightly, as if to pause the room, to regain the microphone, to reclaim control. But the room's attention had shifted away from him for the first time tonight, and he didn't like it. Ethan didn't stop the clip. He let it run long enough for the next detail to land. The staff member stepping closer at the peak of the chaos, not to help, but to angle the phone holder. A small adjustment, precise, meant to capture maximum mess. That tiny motion felt like a betrayal of everything a school was supposed to be. Maya heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." And it wasn't theatrical. It was the sound of a mind updating, painfully. The brain hated admitting it had been fooled. It burned like shame. The room erupted in overlapping voices, some angry, some defensive, some desperately searching for a new target. A parent shouted that Ethan could have faked it. Another demanded the staff member's name. The woman with the scarf stood too, hands trembling, trying to speak over everyone with a voice that suddenly sounded thinner. "This is taken out of context," she insisted, and the irony of that sentence hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt the urge to laugh and cry at the same time. Out of context. That was the weapon they had used on her. The man in the suit stepped forward again, raising his voice with controlled authority. "Everyone, let's be careful," he said. "We don't know the full story." Maya stared at him, stunned by the shamelessness. Minutes ago, he had treated an edited clip as final truth. Now that context threatened his position. He begged for patience. Maya felt a cold clarity settle in her chest. This wasn't about kids. It was about leverage. He didn't want safety. He wanted compliance. The crowd had been his tool, and the tool was slipping. Ethan's hands shook. The noise in the room rose into a roar, and Maya saw him teetering on overload, jaw clenched, eyes bright, breathing too fast. He was holding himself together with sheer will, and it was costing him. Maya stepped closer again, not touching, just anchoring her presence beside him. She spoke loudly enough to cut through the chaos without shouting. "Ask the school for the full security footage," she said. "Ask why they refused to show it. Ask why they tried to make me sign under pressure." Her voice didn't tremble now. It carried the steadiness of someone who had been cornered too many times. A few people went quiet, the way a crowd does when it recognizes a turning point. Maya saw faces change, some with guilt, some with anger, some with confusion. The woman with the scarf sat back down slowly, eyes darting, calculating exits. The liaison from Maya's hallway appeared near the side wall, phone in hand, her smile gone. She looked less like a helper now, and more like a watcher caught in the light. Maya realized with a sinking feeling that exposure didn't automatically mean justice. Exposure only meant the game would change. As the clip ended, the room fell into a shaky silence, the kind that happens after a loud truth lands. Ethan lowered his phone and swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. The man in the suit looked at Ethan with a new expression, something colder than judgment. Maya felt it like a chill, retaliation forming. The man leaned toward the microphone again, voice calm, almost gentle, as if offering an olive branch. "Let's take a break," he said. "And for everyone's protection, please hand over any recordings so we can review them properly." Maya's stomach dropped. It wasn't a request. It was the next move. If this story hit a nerve, if you've ever watched a single mom get judged for surviving, or an autistic person get misread because their nervous system shows what others hide, don't let their pain disappear into silence. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Leave a like so this reaches people who need to feel less alone, and put it here below in the comments. Have you ever been blamed by a clip, a rumor, or a room full of concern? And what do you wish someone had said for you in that moment?